So welcome to Portrait Compositing, and as you can probably gather, we're going to be doing some greens, actually primarily green screen stuff today, and Bethany's here.
Hello.
Oh, we've had a lot of fun this year.
We have.
This is actually our 6th in the series, and this one was a little different than we've done in the past.
A lot of different.
She was a good sport. She put up with she put up with a lot, and I also had to say this because I was getting grief about it. You might have noticed in the opening video that I was wearing different clothing than I am now because we recorded that last week, where poor Bethany had to wear the same clothing because she only owns 2 pieces of clothing. Actually, no, I asked her to wear
3 pieces.
3 pieces. So if you're looking for something to shop for Christmas for Bethany, she needs clothing. I asked her to wear this because we're going to do a little bit later a live shoot, and I wanted to use something that we had used in the previous video, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So what I've got is my MacBook Pro on a Tether Tools Aero table, highly recommend it, sitting on a Kupo C stand. This is a nice stable platform that I use for all my studio shooting. And with that, I've got my Tether Tools cable with the jerk stopper on it that protects the cable in the camera, and I'm shooting a new camera for me, and I absolutely love it. This is a Sony Alpha 99. It's a 24 megapixel full frame camera, beautiful, and the results are just stunning. In fact, on some of the shots when I zoomed into Bethany, even at 100%, even at 200%, every little eyelash was perfect, and there was no chromatic aberration. I just absolutely love it. Now, one of the real fun things during the shoot was I had asked Bethany to bring, actually, we weren't completely truthful. You had 4 outfits on last week.
Yes.
So you do have maybe one was borrowed.
Maybe all work.
Okay. So we did different styles. And one of the things about doing green screen is it pays to have an idea what the background's going to be before you start shooting. So let's watch the first one where it's the setup about how to meter the lights. Let's take a look. All right, so we've got our screen set up, our green screen back here. Can you do this with another color? Well, they make blue ones. Can you just do it with a white seamless? You could get away with it, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. This is really easy, particularly if you use a green screen software. So what I need to do first is make sure it's evenly illuminated. So in this situation, we're going to use at least 3 lights, and a couple of times we're probably going to go to 4. But most important initially is I need to have the background lit up evenly. So I've got 2 ProPhoto D1s here. This is asking a little too much of speed lights, by the way. So we really need to use studio lights in this situation. I've got my Sekonic 478 DR meter here, and I'm going to meter the background. However, today I'm using the ProPhoto Air system to fire my lights. So what I did was I set my meter just on flash waiting. So I'll hit the button and it'll wait for 90 seconds to see a flash. So the important thing is to make sure that the light is fairly even across the background. So I'm going to come over here, and since it's on the waiting mode, I just hit the button to take a reading, and it will wait for 90 seconds. And I'll put it up against the background, take my reading, and I'm getting F9 there. And I want to meter in a couple of different spots around F9 again. F8, so 1/3 of a stop either way, that's great. So I'm going to come around the other side and do the same thing. F9, F8, F8. So I'm going to take one last reading right in the middle. I'm going to put the dome out for that to kind of get the sum, and I have to position myself out of the way of the direct line of the lights. And I'm getting F9 dead center there, and F8 there, so that's great. I've got F8 to F9 all over the place. That's just 1/3 of a stop difference. That's a nice even background. Now, for my main light that I'm going to use to illuminate the subject, I've got a 3-foot by 4-foot softbox right over here to my left. Now, I've already got the background set where F8, F9, nice and even light over the entire background. I also need to measure the light falling on the subject, and I'll end up doing the same thing. I'll just push in the button, point it at the light, hit the test button, and I'm getting F9, which is the same as the background. That's perfect. So, you don't want to see me get photographed? Let's get Bethany out here, who's extra tall today. So we've got country western Bethany today. She always wanted to be a country western singer, right?
Never.
No. Okay. So kind of stand right here in the middle, and let's get you tilted this way. And what I want to do is I want to measure, since again I'm only using one light, I want to measure the bright side of her face. I'm also using dome in because my background lights are still firing, and I'm going to position myself in between that light and her so I just get the reading from this light. So again, I take my reading, and I'm getting F10. I'm going to actually bring that down a little bit, and I can do that right here. You might hear the 2 beeps. Let's try that again. F9, perfect. So now she's exactly the same exposure as the background. I also have her about, remember we get the handy things going here? Let's see. She's about 6 feet off the background, which is nice because then I've got the nice background. And this is a muslin, so it's not that reflective. The beauty is it'll really separate out. I'll be able to put you in any scene I want, but not have green reflecting back on her, which is where you get trouble, especially if you get some green polluting inside the highlights of the shirt. Even though the software is good at getting rid of that, we want to make it as simple as possible. So 6 feet off the background, she's at F9, the background's at F9. That's all we have to do. F9, 100 ISO, I'm at 125th of a second. Just dial that in the camera, and that's it. So let's take a couple shots. Okay, so a couple of great questions have come through, and some of them are going to get answered in a little more detail, but I'm going to go ahead and address them anyway because they're important. First one is, how do I eliminate green screen spillover on the subject? And that's where the metering of the lights really comes in. A couple things. One, when I'm using my meter, I want to make sure that the lights on the green screen typically are going to be either at or slightly below whatever the lighting on the main subject is. Because if it gets too bright, then you're going to get a lot of spillover. Now, the green screen I'm using back here is a muslin green screen. What that means is it's not reflective. Yeah, there's green screen paper out there, rolls of paper. The problem with those is they're a little shinier, and they do have a tendency to cause a lot more reflection going on. We'll cover that in a lot more detail in a little bit. And also software can help, which I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. A couple of you Nikon and Canon shooters out there asked, can you do this with speed lights? And the answer is absolutely. Light is light. Chances are, however, though, that if you're using speed lights, you're probably going to have to go up a little in ISO. I'm shooting at 100 ISO because I really love the effect, the cleanliness of 100 ISO. If you go with speed lights, you're probably going to have to go up a little bit. Also, you can't shoot as fast because, well, you just have those 4 little batteries powering your lights, so they're not going to recycle as fast as a studio light. But could you do this with 3 or 4 speed lights? Absolutely. It really comes down to the metering, though. I can't emphasize this enough. It's very important that that background is evenly illuminated because that's what's going to allow the software, or if you're using Photoshop, to be able to extract that green screen out. Somebody asked, what if you don't have green screen software? Can you do it in Photoshop? The answer is yes. It's a lot more labor intensive, though, and sometimes it's not as easy as you would think. It's going to take a lot more work. Yes, you can do it. The software I'm using is called PhotoKey 5 Pro. Now, PhotoKey has 3 different levels. There's a light version, which is $99. There's a normal version, which is $199, and Pro, which is $299. If you just do a search on PhotoKey software, it'll show up. I believe the company is called TubeTape. Don't know where that came from. But the software, I've tried a bunch of the green screen softwares. This one is phenomenal, and you're going to see in detail how quickly it works compared to trying to do it in Photoshop. Let's see. Someone asked, how do I store green screen as they wrinkle like crazy? I've got a little bit of wrinkles back here, but again, this is a muslin, and we do have a steamer here. So if you're going to be shooting muslin backgrounds, it's probably a good idea to have a steamer as well. The other thing you can do that's a really cheap way of doing it is if we're going to do a shoot and we pull out one of our backgrounds that got really wrinkled, I'll set it up the night before and simply spray it with a water bottle and then just let it sit. And overnight, just the weight of it, and we put weights down on the bottom of the screen, it gets the wrinkles out. So if you don't have a steamer, I would do it that way. And again, getting rid of the wrinkles, just be careful how you fold or roll it. That said, now Photoshop has more trouble with the wrinkles than the green screen software. The green screen software is much more easy to deal with when you've got shadings in that green. It really keys on the tone more so than the value. If you don't have a deep wrinkle that's causing a shadow, it does a really good job of extracting it. All right, that's good questions. Keep them coming. Again, take advantage of the chat room. So what I'm going to do is, let's back off again, because Bethany's out here. I don't have her in her country western outfit.
Thank goodness.
Yes, but we're going to see a country western shoot in just a minute. But what I wanted to go over again is how to take care of the lighting here. So again, when you're doing a setup for a green screen, it really pays to have an idea where you're going to get put.
Yeah.
And what direction of the light is coming from. Now, in our case, I have to admit, some of them I did a little bit backwards because I didn't know what backgrounds I was going to use. Some of them I did, some of them I didn't. So as a safety, if you remember what we did,
We use this as a...
we moved the lights around.
Yeah.
So I would illuminate her both from left, right, and center with the same light. And again, it was very important that I meter them first. So if I want to get the main, in this case, I've got a main light here and a secondary light here. Now if I take my reading here, turn my, my airport controller on. Let me do that again. So I'm getting 6.3 from that light and 6.3 from this light. So I'm getting very even lighting on her right here, and I need to make sure that that's at the same or lower, or higher rather, than my background. So again, as you remember, as you saw in the previous video, it's important when you're metering back here to keep yourself out of the way. So when I'm measuring these umbrellas, I do have to make sure that I'm out of the way. In fact, I was metering this morning and I took my center reading and it was way off and I realized I was standing in the light, so that's not going to work. As far as the whole dome in, dome out thing, again, a question always comes up about metering. It all depends what you're measuring. If I'm measuring the contribution of each light separately, what the dome in does is it isolates that light. So if I want to get this light right here, and that's it, I see that I'm at 6.3. I actually want to bring that up. So again, it's a beauty of the air remote. I can change the power right from here. So now I've got this one at F9, which is where I wanted it to be. I'm going to use this light as a fill, so maybe a stop under would give me a nice light ratio. So 6.3. 6.3 to F9 is how many stops?
Turn my brain off for a second.
Okay. Yeah. It's one full stop. 6.3 to F9 is one stop, so that's a nice ratio. When I want to have my main contribution back to the camera, then I'll put the dome out, put it underneath, actually either under her eye or under her chin, depending on where the lights are coming from. I have to get out of the way, get my reading, and I'm getting F7 in the middle, which is a little low because my lights in the back were F8 and F9. So I need to bring this one up a little bit. So I'm going to, you heard the 3 beeps, so that brought that up a third of a stop. And I'm also going to bring this one up. So you can hear the beep. So that's, again, each beep, if I just tap this as a third of a stop, if I hold it in and get a beep, that's a full stop. That's, again, the beauty of having this thing. So I'll take a reading again from here. So I'm at F7 now here. F9, and then back to the camera. I'm getting F8, which is matching to what my background is. So that's a beautiful thing. So by doing that, by having her lit at the same or maybe a third of a stop brighter than the background, that's going to help eliminate that spill. Now the other thing that's going on is you are how many feet from the background?
6.
Remember that? Yes. You're 6 feet from the background. So having her further away from the background helps eliminate the spill. And the fact that we're using a muslin rather than a paper, it's less reflective, so that helps with that as well. So this is kind of the set that I had. Actually, I think I had you turned one way or the other. It doesn't matter. Pick a direction.
I'll do this one.
So you can see here she's sitting on an apple crate, which wasn't going to do for our country western set. So I had to replace it in Photoshop with a hay bale. So we had a guitar for her as well. Oh, I just remembered, I have an accessory I left in the car. I'm going to have to run out and get it.
You can leave it in there.
Oh, I think we need to have that. So let's take a look at our country western shoot, and you're going to see a little later where she ended up. So let's take a look. So one of the cool things about the green screen is it really doesn't matter what angle you shoot at. If I shoot vertically or horizontally, it doesn't matter. All I really need to do is make sure all the area around you is green. I can then put her in a horizontal scene or a vertical scene. It really doesn't matter, because we're not going to use this background. We're just going to extract Bethany out of the set. Now, a couple things when you're doing your lighting. It pays to have an idea as to where you're going to put your subject. What kind of scene are you going to put them in? So where's the light coming from? So what I'm going to do to prepare for that is I'm going to have her in the same background, but I'm going to change the position of the main light so that I can get a very directional light from both sides and have a fairly frontal light as if the sun was maybe above and in front of you. That way I have the correct lighting for you wherever, whatever scene I want to put you in. Now in this scene we're going to do fairly well lit kind of stuff with this. A little bit later on, when we get into some of the more fun stuff, then we're going to go to a more dramatic lighting. So we're going to have some real harder edge kind of stuff that will fit in the scene and the dress, because I have some ideas about where I want to put her. But keeping your main light still directional is really important, because you've probably seen where, like at the mall, where they'll put somebody against a green screen and put them in a Christmas scene or something, and it looks just cheesy.
Flat.
Yeah, we don't want cheesy. We still want to maintain that dimension. Yeah. So what these lights are doing in the background is they're just simply evenly illuminating the green so that it makes it easy to extract out. This light is illuminating you. We don't really care what's going on back there because we're going to get rid of it. It just needs to be lit well. This is everything that's going to show up for you, and that's going to allow us to create a real 3D, realistic effect when we composite you into another set. So that's the real cool part. So I'm going to shoot a couple this way. I'm going to move the light to the other side. We'll shoot from this side, and then a couple in the middle, and then we'll have everything we need. And I'm going to shoot headshots, like 3/4 and full length, so I can put you wherever. And we're going to bring out some props as well for this budding country western star. She hates me. Come a little bit closer to the light, like around right there. Yes, right there. Beautiful. And I want to elongate her, so I'm going to come down a little bit lower. Great. Oh yeah, this is just one thing you need.
Yes. Oh, just one thing?
Just one thing.
One little thing?
One little thing.
Thank you.
Here's your guitar. So first, yeah, we'll put it, let's see. Here, hold the camera a second. So you're just going to do, first thing, you're just going to do this. That's good. That's cool. Oh yeah, where are we going to put you in this? Huh?
We were in a farm.
That's right. We'll put it back in the barn we used last time. All right. Okay, have a seat. And kind of angle yourself that way a little bit. And are you righty or lefty? I never knew that. You ready? Okay. So that hand's right, correct. Put this one over top so that you're going to, you know, yeah, just kind of hold on. Nice E chord. What do you think, huh? All right, so since she's got the guitar, I'm just going to re-meet her again. And we're still at F9, so we're good. Perfect, right there. Love it. Let me bring this light around a little bit. All right, angle the, all right, yeah, right there, perfect, perfect. Now your other hand, don't do this, actually kind of like do this on the strings. Yeah, good, right there, perfect. Oh, she's even got the Daisy Duke stare going there. Angle the top of the guitar towards me a little bit, right? Like tilt it this way. I mean, the part that's by your knee, I just want to have it right there, that's it. Just want to get the glare off of it. Oh, this is great. Somebody asked about using different softwares. Can you extract the subject using softwares like Topaz Remask? On1's got mask software, Nick stuff. Yes, you can use all of those softwares to do it. When you see what the green screen software does, however, when you see how fast it is, you're gonna see the difference, and you're gonna see why it's worth the investment. It's one thing if you're doing this occasionally, every once in a while, yeah, you're gonna do it manually. But when you see how fast the green screen software, it literally is like that and it's done. It's just a beautiful thing. Someone asked, can green screen also be used for videos? Absolutely. Same one. By the way, it's not that expensive to get started in this. This same company, TubeTape, has a little kit with PhotoKey 5 Lite, their Lite version, which is basic, and this muslin. And it's like $159. or $169. You can't beat it for a starting kit. And this muslin's really nice, so I highly recommend getting into that. Someone asked, do I recommend foam instead of muslin? No. Again, it's the software that makes the difference, and you're going to see it. I'm going to show you how the PhotoKey 5 works. Once you see it, it'll be obvious. Someone asked about using blue rather than green. Absolutely, there are blue screens as well. It's just some kind of unnatural color that doesn't usually occur on skin or clothing that makes it easy to extract, but you could just as easily use blue. Someone asked about if I'd talk about shooting backgrounds for green screen. That's a great question. Two things I always look for when I'm out shooting. One is textures. I'll stop and shoot a pile of rocks or a wall, or peeling paint or rusting metals. I will shoot that stuff a lot, and I have an entire collection on my drive of textures. The other thing I do is I do shoot backgrounds. I look for scenes that I could see compositing someone into. Now, PhotoKey 5 Pro does come with a collection of backgrounds, and if you go onto their website, again, we'll send you the info on that. They sell entire collections of backgrounds that you can use, but I do like shooting them myself. It's just a matter of taking a close look at the lighting. Just make sure the light is directional. You don't want to do this kind of stuff in midday. Another good question. Said the subject's 6 foot for the screen. How wide is the screen? All right, this is a, what is this, Rick, a 10 foot?
12.
This is a 12-foot background, and again, it came with the $169 package. You can't beat it. I think it ended up by itself was like 69 bucks. The key, however, is it only needs to be bigger than your subject. It just needs to extend around them. Beyond that, it really doesn't matter. You can just crop when you go into the software. How much difference does depth of field make? Good question. What I prefer to do is when I'm shooting a subject on green screen, I want them completely in focus. So I'm shooting back from enough distance, probably 6 to 8 feet from the subject, from Bethany. I'm using a 24 to 70 lens, and with that shorter lens at f8, I'm getting focus from near to far. If I was shooting at 70 to 200, I'd have to be back a little bit further, or I'd have to increase my lights. It's much easier to defocus after the fact, particularly both in the green screen softwares, which allow you to do that, as well as Photoshop, particularly with the new blur filters in Photoshop. So I'd rather start sharp, because I can always defocus. You can't go the other way. A couple questions about lights. How can you adjust for spillage on the background? And how can you adjust for spillage from the umbrellas on the model? All good questions. It all comes down to the positioning of the lights and the reflectors that are being used. If you take a look over here on this softbox, this is a softbox that's got the recessed wing on it. And what it allows me to do is to have the light coming across the scene so not much of it is hitting the background. A little bit maybe, but again, remember my umbrellas that are f8 or f9, if I get a 2.8 or even a f4 contribution from one of these other lights hitting the background, it's not going to be enough to make a difference. Same thing with the umbrellas. I've got my umbrellas angled to the background, and when Bethany is up here, there's a very little bit of the umbrella maybe showing through. If it proves to be a problem, there's a really simple solution. Use flags. If you're not familiar with the concept of flag, it's something as simple as a piece of black foam board, put it on a stand, and put it in between the light and your model. It's still going to illuminate the background fully, but you won't have any spill over onto your model. Let's see. So someone asked, is there an advantage to shooting the background and subject at the same f-stop as opposed to making the background lighter or darker? Darker is okay, not too much though, because you have to have enough green for the software to extract. So if you're a stop under maybe, you might be okay. If you go over, if your background is brighter than the foreground, you're going to end up with a lot of spillage. That green can sometimes be difficult to get out, particularly with light colored clothing or light skin. So by having it at or slightly below your main lights, it's easy for the software to extract, yet it minimizes the amount of spillage that bounces back onto the subject. And again, this assumes how much distance you have. As the subject gets closer to the background, if you're shooting in a very tight area, you're going to get more spillage if the subject's only 2 or 3 feet off the background. By having them 6 feet or more from the background, then that spillage is greatly reduced because you don't have that reflection. Let's see, what else we got? So someone asked, using only 2 lights, can you set up for green? Probably not, actually. You're going to need at least 3. You're going to have 2 lights on your background. And what I've got them is, I've got them each coming in at about 30 degrees. So what does that mean? Well, rather than both of them pointing at the middle, which would give us a hot spot here, I've got each light about 1/3 in from either side. So one light is focused right here, and the other about 3 feet in from the other side. So the contribution in the middle ends up being perfect. That's what the meter can tell you. That's why it's so important to have a meter when doing this green screen, because your camera can't tell you this. By metering around the scene, I can make adjustments to that light so that I'm always, wherever I look, I'm within 1/3 of a stop all over the background, and that makes the extraction just plain simple. Let's see, somebody asked about some of the other meters. The 358, yes, I'm using the 478 here. This has become my, one of my new best friends. I love this meter, but I still have a 358 that I still use. I also have a 308 and a 758. All of these meters have what's called the flash waiting mode, where I push the button and it will wait for 90 seconds for a reading. Since I am not using Pocket Wizards today, I'm using the air system that comes with these Profoto lights. These don't talk directly, even though this has the radio capabilities. So for me to take a reading with this, it's on waiting mode. And I can do the same thing on a 358 or a 308. I simply push the button in, put the meter where I want, and then hit the test button on the remote. And you can see when I stood closer, I don't know if you can see on the screen there, it just came back and it told me F11. So all of those meters have that waiting mode, and they can all do that if you're using some other kind of remote. Okay, let's see. Someone asked, could I have used a circular polarizer to remove the glare on the guitar? Yes, you could. The only downside of polarizers in the studio is they end up acting as neutral density filters, so you're going to lose about a stop, depending on how it's turned. It's generally about a stop of light. Let's see. All right, a couple other questions about, somebody said they like to use kicker lights behind the subject, hair lights, all of that. Here's the beauty of it. All of your lighting setups can be exactly the same. The only thing that is changing is that we're using these 2 lights to illuminate the background. And when we come back, I'll show you those a little bit closer. Let's see. Okay, a lot more questions to answer, but I want to show you something else. For those of you that are not using any green screen software and using something else, I'm going to show you how you can do this in Photoshop. You're going to see it's labor intensive, but it's something, if you just want to experiment with it first, you can try it this way. So if you're not familiar with this tool in Photoshop, probably the easiest way to get a really clean removal of green screen, particularly when you're dealing with fine hair and not using some third-party software, is to learn how to use the background eraser. So here's a little demo on the background eraser in Photoshop.
One question that's sure to come up is, can you composite without having to have a green screen and still be able to get a good result? Yes, of course you can. It's a little more manual, it takes a little more work, but it can be done. Now, it really helps if you have a fairly uniform background, because there's a couple of different approaches you can take, including selecting by color range, using the magic wand, etc. But to have a little bit more control and really see what you're doing, I'm going to first show you how to use something called the background eraser tool. And it's hidden right here. In fact, your menu would normally show you the eraser like this. What you really want is the background eraser. And I'm going to zoom in on an area so we can see a little better what's going on. And how this works is, with the background eraser tool selected, you hold down Alt or Option and click, and that picks the color that is then going to be used as the background. Now, before I start working on this, I want to duplicate this background layer. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J to give myself a copy, and then I'm going to turn off the original background so I can see it go to transparent. So again, Alt or Option, click on the gray area in this case, and then you just start erasing. And notice that it does a pretty good job of leaving the fine hairs alone, so they will stay in your composite if you want them. You have to be a little careful when you get around clothing. Sometimes it will start to pick up a little bit of it, so just be a little bit close. And also make sure you click actually on gray. If you click on something transparent, it's not going to work. So after you're done, what you want to do is you're just going to kind of do the border so that you have an easier area to select around. And you can see there's a little bit of shading here because the gray is getting a little darker. So what I need to do is option click again, and then that will pick out some of that areas of the background that were left behind. Now when you're done painting around the edges, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Now to check to see how clean you actually were with doing this, I would paste to zoom in again and turn on the old background so you can see it coming through. And when you see areas like this that are a different color than the old background, that means you didn't completely get everything. And this is where the importance comes in to continuous to resample on the background, especially if it's uneven. So again, I'll alter option click here, and now you can see as I go back over this, then it starts to match the original background. So as you're moving around, as your background varies, you're going to want to continue to do this to get rid of this stuff. And when you're all done, you'll see a nice even color from the original background coming through. So here we are. So at this point, it makes it easy to use something like the lasso tool and just to do a rough selection around the image and then delete the rest of that stuff that's in your way. So once again, I'll use the other side and delete that, and now I have a nice selection off of the background that I can then composite with. And you can even zoom in and see we got all the little fine hair by using that background eraser tool.
All right, lots more questions. So a couple of easy ones first. Someone asks, is there any disadvantage to putting the model further away from the background? No, none at all. In fact, the further away from the background, the less spillage you're going to have to deal with, and that makes it easy. Good question. Someone asked, what do you recommend for screening floral design work? Obviously, if you've got a subject with a lot of green in it, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to separate it out from the background. If you go on to tubetape.com, they actually have tutorials on a lot of this stuff, how to shoot green stuff. Probably the easiest thing, though, just be to use another color. One of the beauties of the green screen software is you can actually tell it what tint you're going to take out. So if you use blue or whatever, some kind of color that's not in the rest of the piece, it will extract that out for you. We're calling it green screening because that's the most common, but technically it could be any color as long as it's a solid that doesn't exist in the rest of the subject. And someone mentioned that they've used green screen paper in the past, and when the subject wore a white blouse, there was just no way to get the green sheen out of the blouse. I think I just showed you that in the background eraser, where you have to actually use a brush and paint in using just color, and that will get rid of the green. Someone asked, what is this thing that adjusts flash? Let's talk about the set, and let's talk about the hardware that I'm using a bit. I happen to be using 4 ProPhoto D1 lights here. Could I do this with my speed lights? The answer is yes, certainly could. If you've got studio lights, though, it does have faster recycle. I can shoot at a lower ISO. It's a much more powerful lighting system. That said, could I do this with speed lights? Yes, absolutely. Concept's the same. This thing that I'm using is ProPhoto's Air Remote Controller. It's their version, their built-in system into these lights that allows me to have 6 different groups and 8 different channels, so I can have all of my lights controlled right here. I can bring them up and down in full stops or tenths of stops. I can turn on and off the modeling lights, and basically anything you can do from the back of the flash, I can do from right here. And this also fits on the hot shoe of my camera to fire my lights after I've made my adjustments. Now, if you're not using something like this and you're just using your speed lights, then by all means I would use my Pocket Wizards for doing that and do exactly the same thing. Put the Pocket Wizard on top of the camera. A lot of you are curious about the entire set, so let's take a walk around the set, starting over here. So I mentioned I've got 2 lights on using umbrellas. These are my background lights. Why umbrellas? Well, umbrellas kind of send out a diffuse, fairly even light with a gradual fall off. They do throw light kind of all over the place, but that's exactly what I want from the background. So I've got one here, and as I mentioned, it's coming in at about a 30-degree angle, coming about 1/3 of a way into the background. On the other side, right over here, I've got an exactly matching system. It's exactly the same light, same umbrella, again, coming in about 30%, so that the contribution of the 2 of them, when I get to the center, ends up being almost exactly even. And you might have seen when I metered earlier that I was within a third of a stop. Every reading I took was F8 or F9, which makes it really easy for the software to do the extraction. Let's see. So somebody asked, this is a good question, why does the green screen need to be lit well if it's going to be removed later? You're kind of answering your own question if you think about it. The reason it needs to be lit well is to make it easy to extract. The more evenly lit it is, the easier it is for the software or Photoshop or any of the masking programs to find the background. You can use tools in Photoshop like select by color range, and if you're very evenly lit, that'll do a pretty good job of getting rid of the green. So that's the whole reason for doing it. Also, if you've got any shadows or dark folds, when you go into the software is going to see that as a shadow cast rather than as a green, and even the green screen software will leave that in. It'll get rid of the green part, but it will cast a shadow, and you don't want to have that unless you're planning on it. Someone asked if better use prime or zoom lenses. Doesn't really matter. The photography part, the posing, the lighting part that we're doing is going to be exactly the same as if we were doing a studio shoot. Again, what we're adding is the element of the two umbrellas back here. Someone asked, could you use umbrellas all around instead of softboxes? Now, come on over here. I actually temporarily moved my softbox out of the way so you could see the second umbrella here. One of the beauties of a softbox, especially the recessed softbox with these wings, is the light becomes much more directional. So it allows me to create a nice soft light, like an umbrella, which is soft, but it's much more controlled. And I can change the feathering of the light, and we'll talk about much more about this in some future sessions. I have much more control as to where the light is hitting and where it is falling off and where it's not hitting. The downside of an umbrella is it just throws light everywhere. That's good for the backgrounds, but if I used umbrellas to light my subject, then I'm going to be adding light on the background also from my lights illuminating the subject, which is going to screw up my ratios, and I'm going to have to go back and remeter. Which also brings up the question someone asked, somewhat snarkily, if this wasn't Sekonic sponsored, would I be metering so often? The answer is yes. This is really important. Every time I change a position of the light, I need to remeter the subject. I don't need to remeter my background. Once that's set, that's set. But I do need to know the contribution of the different lights on my subject, left and right, because that's going to have a big effect on the ratios. And again, we're going to do a whole new series starting next year where we're going to involve creating ratios for different kinds of moods. Let's see, what else before we get back in? Someone asked if you can use Adobe Lightroom 3.3 with the green screen. Good question. I'm not sure how you would do that because Lightroom doesn't do layers. You'd have to export it out of there first. So I'll think about that when I come back, but I don't think there is a good answer for that. And then lastly, how many feet do I have the main light from the subject? That's going to depend on the mood. Generally, I'm fairly close with my main light, generally about 3 to 4 feet in this case. It depends. When I go up closer, and I think you're going to see some in a little bit, actually in the next segment, where I have Bethany right up against the light because I want to have a much stronger ratio. That all comes down to your mood. Last thing, somebody asked about what if you're shooting full length, which you're about to see. In that case, if you're going to do a lot of full length shooting, this is a 3-foot by 4-foot softbox. I highly recommend investing in a 4-foot by 6-foot softbox because then you can have the light practically down to the floor and you're going to illuminate your entire subject evenly if that's what you're after. We actually have a 4 by 6-foot softbox on one of our video lights right now. There's no way for us to turn the camera around and show you that right now, but that provides an even illuminated light really over my entire height. And if you're going to do full-length green screen, definitely a worthwhile investment. All right. Boy, you guys are really digging in for the questions. Here's a tough one. How do you handle a subject whose school colors are green and blue? Well, I haven't run into that one yet, but could it happen? Sure. And again, you can pick another color. Pick some, again, unusual color. Buy an orange background. Again, the software allows you, when you're choosing the green screen or your screen, to just use an eyedropper and put it on that color, and that's what it will extract out of the image. So again, we're talking about green screen because it's the most common, but you technically can use any color. Okay. Oh, and again, when you're doing full length, good question. Do I worry about green reflecting up from the floor? Yeah, that can be a little bit of a problem. You're going to see, though, in a couple of minutes how good the green screen software is at eliminating that. Yes, in that case, obviously, I'm very close to the floor. I'm standing on it. I'm standing on this green screen. If it is well lit, there's going to be some spill. And as you saw in demo, and you're going to see in another one, if the subject's wearing like khaki pants or something like that, you get a lot of green spill into that. The software does a great job of extracting that, and that's what we're after. So, okay, that's it for now. Bethany, if I could get you back out here. You still plotting? Yeah?
Yes.
You going to get me coconut?
This whole time. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next thing we did was we had you in that beautiful black dress.
Yeah.
So we were going for what kind of more of a, more of an elegant, kind of an elegant look. Although she still was suffering the after effects of the country western thing, which she's mildly traumatized by apparently. So I'm going to let that go, of course, right? No.
No chance.
I'm going to post those. I'm going to send them to your fiance. So with the elegant shoot, you plan. I had ideas where I was going to put you, but then I got a little bit different vibe at you at first.
Oh my gosh, she did.
Yes, she wasn't mad at me after that, but I don't know if you were mad at me during, but it definitely affected you somehow. So I got a very different look on your face. So you were much more intense. That's one thing I love working with you, because you can go from happy-go-lucky country western to dark Jedi, which we're going to see later. So sometimes you have to be adaptable when you're doing this. And she's seen all the composites that we've done. So what I was originally planning on having you outside in flower gardens and in front of nice building with flowers, your mood didn't.
He didn't go that way.
I didn't go that way because her mood didn't go that way. So you have to be adaptable. So that's why I shot you with different lights and put you in some scenes after looking at you that I thought were more appropriate. And don't you think it worked though, really?
It just fits my personality so well.
So these are full length. In this case, you had this beautiful black dress on. It was full length. Black made it easy because there's no reflection onto the black. What was that material?
Kind of like a spandex stretchy material.
Okay,
So
but it wasn't very reflective. It was it was a dull, kind of a matte finish to it. So we didn't have any problems with spill. So in this case, you're going to see, even using a 4-foot softbox, which I would normally not do for full lengths, they worked for Bethany. So let's take a look at shooting the formals and where we ended up putting her there. A little bit of difference from the hayseed that we had on the set just a few minutes ago. So got Bethany in a beautiful formal dress.
Cleaned up.
She cleans up nice, doesn't she? The thing when you're doing something like this and you're dealing with the green screen, it's almost like when you're, actors must go through this. They're trying to react to the scene and they have no idea what's there. Same thing when you're composing a shot like this. You really have to pre-visualize what you're going to do. Where is your subject going to go? And you have to, again, light accordingly and pose accordingly. So, again, since I have ideas for the scenes that I want to put her in, but I'm not sure what's going to be the best light direction for it, once again, I'm going to reproduce the lighting. I'm going to have left, right, and center, so I can put the light on either side of her without having to swap her body horizontally in software. So I think that'll work a lot nicer. So once again, I have to take a meter reading. I've got my 478 again. So I'm going to take my reading, just hit the lights, and we're at F9, which again, if you remember when we metered our background, we were at F9. So again, the light on her, the main light on her, matches the background. Camera-wise, just kind of to go over this again, I'm shooting tethered into Lightroom 4. I'm shooting the new Sony Alpha 99 camera. I love this camera. It is gorgeous, full frame. And I'm shooting with the Tether Tools tether cable, so I can shoot directly into Lightroom. Now, Lightroom doesn't have a plug-in directly for it. There's a software called DNA Software that makes a plug-in for Lightroom to use this camera, and it works beautifully. It works seamlessly. So again, F9, foreground and background. So I'm going to start getting some of my shots here. Yeah, let's do that first. Much better. I want to bring this around a little bit. So what I'm going after here is I want a little bit of a softer light. I want to have it directional, but not quite as heavy shadow on the dark side. That's nice. All right, so let's do what you were doing, the over the back that you were showing me. Beautiful. So again, I'm going to shoot some headshots. I'm going to shoot some 3/4. And actually come forward a little bit. Right there, beautiful. Nice, that's really nice. All right, so give me some movement. Beautiful. Not beautiful, love it, just do your thing. And if you can see how fast we're shooting, this is one of the beauties of having studio lights. This is the kind of thing you're not going to get away with speed lights. So if you're going to shoot speed lights, you're going to be a little more static. Can you do it? Yes. But just understand you're probably going to have to go higher ISO as well. I'm shooting at 100 because I have enough power in these studio strobes to pull that off. But if I was using speed lights, yeah, I'd probably have to go up to 640 ISO or something. And no matter what anybody tells you, when you go up to high ISO, you're going to get noise. It's going to increase the noise. Are you going to see it in an 8x10? Maybe not. But if you're going to go to a big print, then maybe. Let me just get a couple up close. More headshotty. Beautiful. Great. And again, what we're doing is when I'm shooting tethered into Lightroom, we created a preset for this. Bethany hold the Color Checker Passport, created a color calibration preset and a white balance, and this is automatically getting applied to every image. It's really, really simple. I'm going to put the camera down. I'm going to switch my lights because I kind of picture Bethany here. I'm kind of picturing an outside environment, maybe a building with columns, maybe arches, something formal, kind of like some of the gardens we saw when we were in Central Park, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of, and then maybe also some indoor with some window light. So that's why I'm going to do a couple also, I've decided, a little more directionally, so that you'll have light from one side and be a little more shadow on the other. Yeah, now we've got a little bit more of a directional light. Oh, that's gorgeous. Let me get a couple full length. Now give me a spin, yeah. Yes. You tell me when you're ready. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go after a little more dramatic lighting, coming in nice and close. Beautiful. Yeah, so this, then this kind of lighting, what it's going to end up simulating is more like a window light. Where I'm going to have you in an interior scene with the window nearby. Beautiful. Okay, don't move anything except eyes right at me. Chin down a little bit more. Okay, now look right here. Chin up, a little more. Beautiful. Someone asked about doing this for tabletop, which, if you're not familiar with that, would be like product photography. Could you do this? And absolutely. Someone also asked about getting rid of the green screen and using white. Can you use white? Yeah, you can actually. I have used white successfully. It can sometimes take a little work. Typically there are pieces on the body or reflections or highlights or eyes that are going to show up as well that are going to try to get extracted. But you can use masks to get rid of that. And again, that's a little more in depth. Take a look at the software site again. If you've already got software, as I mentioned, this muslin is like $69 from that website. Again, it's TubeTape, TubeTape.com. I have no official relationship with them. I've just tried some of the different softwares, and I fell in love with theirs. If you have a green screen and no software, then they sell the software separately as well. Any combination you want. Someone asked, why don't I have a shadow from the softbox? A couple reasons. The softbox, again, it's very directional. I've got it coming across the set rather than going down, so it's not casting a big shadow. Plus, remember, I've got two umbrellas that are illuminating my background. So not only is it illuminating the background, but again, since they throw light all over the place, it's illuminating the floor behind me and pretty much right up to the model. So it's really cutting down on the shadows. There are very light shadows right along the feet, on the shoes, on parts of the leg that are near the floor. And the cool thing about the green screen software, PhotoKey 5 Pro, is that it keeps those as shadows so that when you put in a new background, it casts the shadow there, so it makes it really cool. Someone asked, can I post these shots, originals with the green screen and the resulting pictures? And the answer is yes. In fact, I'm going to leave you today, not quite yet, but I'm going to leave you today with a little slideshow that does exactly that. I'm going to show you the green screen shot followed by the composite for each of the sets that we did. Someone asked about, can you use hot lights for this? And the answer is yes. I do have a set of hot lights that I've used. I have a set of Westcott Spider lights, which are continuous light hot lights. Hot lights are great, particularly for product photography, because you see the light all the time. Downside, they're nowhere near as powerful or as bright as studio strobes. Remember, these things are building up a charge, and when they pop out that light, even though it's just for a thousandth of a second, it's an extreme amount of light. That's why I can get f8, f11, even f16 out of these with my background getting extracted. Hot lights don't have that much power, so you are going to have to go up probably in a higher ISO. Again, if you're shooting product photography, it doesn't matter. You can shoot it a 15th or a 10th of a second. Can't do that with people. So that's the one disadvantage there. Let's see. Lastly, before we go back to one of our last shoots, someone asked what meter would I recommend as a starter model for students that is less cost but still functional. I'd highly recommend you take a look at the Sekonic 308S. I have one of those. Great little meter. It's a little bit over $200. And we'll send you the link to that as well. In fact, if you're a student, I know we have a special site for students where you can get even an extra discount. So let's continue on because I really am running out of time. The next shoot we did was where Bethany came in with her little flapper dress. She didn't wear it today, but I'm going to bring her back for our Dark Jedi Bethany, which really created a completely different mood. It was a more reflective dress, so there ended up being a lot more spill. And that's what the PhotoKey software pulled out very easily. It was a kind of a gold dress, so since it was a little bit shiny, there was a lot more reflection from the green screen. It made doing the work in Photoshop or elsewhere very difficult, but the PhotoKey software pulled it out right away. So let's take a look at that.
Now, even when you're using a green screen, sometimes you can have some spillover either onto skin or onto clothing. And what do you do if you don't have a green screen software and you're just working in something like Photoshop? So what kind of possibilities are there? Well, probably the easiest one to try first would be I'll duplicate the background, Command or Control J, and in this case try something like color range. Now with color range, I have the eyedropper. Set the fuzziness, which is kind of you can see its area that it picks. Set that a little on the low side and click something near your subject. And you can see in the silhouette what it is picked out. Now again, we don't care about this stuff off to the edge. We want to get the stuff close to the model. And what I want to do is add to that. So I'm going to click around close to the body just to get rid of the parts that are going to be difficult for me to get rid of. And that seems to have done a pretty good job. So let's hit OK and see what kind of mask Photoshop comes up with. Not too shabby. Let's use the lasso tool, and we're going to add onto this background here. And I will also, I'm just holding down the Shift key to add to this. I'll clean up around the shoes a little later. And OK. So let's create a mask from this. So if I just click on the mask icon, you can see it actually gives us that. And what I want is actually the opposite of that. So I just hit Command or Control I to invert the mask, and it allows me to see what's there that should and what shouldn't be there. So I'm going to just bring up the brush, give myself a nice big brush at 100%, and I'm going to paint with black around those areas that I know I don't want to be showing through. Now that's all wonderful. Let's take a look and see how good a job it did. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the original background, and we'll get to see, and you can see the problem is we've got a lot of green spill going on here. Not only on the skin but through the hair, and this is going to be a lot more problematic. Now, a couple things we can do. We've got problems on the skin here as well. We've got some overflow, some spill from the green background shading onto her skin. So how do you do that? Well, here's the way. Get yourself the eyedropper. Select the skin color. In this case, I'm just going to click right there. Oh, make sure you're on the image itself. So I've got my skin, and click on a brush. I'll make it a little bit smaller. Now, the other thing you want to do is, in case I decide to cut this out later, I'm going to lock the transparent pixels. And with that brush, I want to change it from normal to color. So now what happens is it's going to take that skin tone and apply that tone to these areas that are green. So I simply paint over top, move along, and you can see it applies the skin tone color but keeps the shading or the tonality underneath. Again, this is a fairly manual way of doing this, but it does work. Same thing over in this hair area. Let's go take a closer look. In this case, we're going to have to choose the black hair. So I'll get my eyedropper, click on the hair, and then I can just click on the hair. And you want to be careful not to paint on the skin and start to apply a black tone to that. But you can see it does work, and that would be something that you could get away compositing. So again, with the pink on her dress, again grabbing skin tone and just painting with color. And you can see there's a lot more work to be done here. We've got in this fringe of the dress, there's a bunch of green there as well. So again, click the eyedropper, get appropriate color, get your brush, and I can go nice and big here and just start painting over top of this stuff that ended up green. Alright, so this is all well and fine, but this is a pretty manual way of doing it. And let me show you something else. And this is if you're going to do some green screen compositing, you really want to have software to do it. And the software that I'm using is called Photokey 5 Pro. So I click on Import, and I go and get the same image, and it will put it into the software. Now watch as far as extraction goes, it does it all for you. That's the beauty of it. And I'm also going to zoom in to 100% because again we do still have some of this green overlay, but look how good a job the software did at particularly look at the hair there. Let me scale this back up to 100 and you can see that it really does a great job, but we still have a little bit of spill. The beauty of a software like this that is designed for this, however, is that it has the controls to allow you to take care of that. I select the key icon over here and you see spill suppression as one of the options. And what I want to do is I need a little bit more spill suppression here because we've got some green on the skin. Watch how simple it is. I go from spill method from standard to extended, and look at that. It's all gone immediately. Just clicking the extended, picked it up out of the skin, picked it up out of the dress. We can go look at this fringe over here as well, and you can see it is all gone. So now if I want to add a new background, I can go back to import. Let me fit this to screen again. Pick a background. Let me import one for that. And it could be anything. I'll just take this barn for now. Click on open. And it's a much smaller background, so I'll just scale it so just so you can see the effect. But you can see that quickly it is ready to go. It is a beautiful thing. I'll bring Bethany back scale-wise in the foreground so we can see the whole thing. And you get to see, I can just move her around in the scene, and it's a absolute perfect suppression of all the green. And there you go. That's how easy it is to use if you've got software that can do that. Now this today isn't meant to be a full demo on Photokey 5 Pro, but I am a big fan of this software if you are looking to do green screen.
So I hope the combination of that and Photoshop made it clear. One of the questions was, again, to clarify how to use the brush to paint over the skin color. What you do again, I extracted the subject out of the background so that there were transparent pixels beyond her. You then, right on the top of the layers box, there's a lock transparent pixels option in Photoshop. Click on that, and then with an eyedropper, simply pick a piece of skin. Pick a color. You could even pick a color that's nearby. Once that gets put in your foreground, you then select your brush and change the blending mode from normal to color. And what that does is it paints with that color tone, but it keeps the underlying luminance or the darkness and the texture alive underneath the image. So all it does is it gets rid of the green and replaces it with that tone, yet it still keeps the same lightness and darkness and texture. So it merely makes it very easy. Let's see. couple of you are asking kind of detailed questions about the difference between pro and light and normal. I'll recommend you take a look on the website. That's getting really deep. I had mentioned about the Jazzy dress, and you could see that there was a lot of green spill in that, and by simply changing the option, rather than painting with the brush, using the software to change the option to extended spill reduction, in a snap, it's just gone. It's a beautiful thing. So let's take a look at this, this last shoot, because then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you a little slideshow that shows the befores and afters for each of these images. But let's take a look both of Bethany in the Jazzy dress, and then where I kind of got her to wear the black outfit and kind of had a little bit dark and kind of little Jedi thing going. So let's take a look. All right, so we're going to do something a little bit different. There's, yes, Bethany's down here this time. Okay. So what we're going to do is kind of do that, that rim light that we did earlier, where we had her close to the softbox. But this time I have her horizontal, and we've got the rim light hanging over top of her. So first thing I want to do is remeet her. So if you would do the honors, kind of hold it about your chin level. There we go, F9. So let's dial that in. And this time I'm going to get down low. And so kind of my thought for this is we'll do, I don't know, Bethany on the beach, or probably somewhere, since she's more rim lit in this one, it's going to have to be something a little more mysterious. Kind of lying down someplace you really wouldn't usually expect to find her lying down. I'm not sure exactly where that is, but we'll figure it out later. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to bring the light a little more forward because I want to illuminate a little more of her. So I'm going to bring it forward and angle to create a little more of a more even light. Okay, now look at me. Put your back, oh, my mind. Now switch your legs. That's it. There it is right there. That's it. She's being a real good sport.
Torturing me.
Absolutely. So I forgot to bring my samurai sword and my lightsaber with me for all you other fellow geeks out there. So what I'm doing is I've got Bethany holding this support rod. This is going to be both her samurai sword and her lightsaber. She really secretly loves this. And I'm going to composite the... Go ahead, say it. No? No? It's not really you?
No.
Okay. I'm going to composite them in Photoshop after. And we got to figure out what we can do to torture you some more.
Of course.
It might involve dragons, I'm not sure.
Probably.
So we're going to have
tuned.
we're going to have some do some poses that she's really going to be sorry she did. But it'll be fun.
Well, always.
Okay, so let's see what we end up with.
Enjoy.
Both your hands behind your back. Turn your hips towards me a little bit more. Yeah, just do that. Get some makeup. Chin down, way down. Turn your shoulder this way a little more to it. Straighten your head up a little bit more. Chin down. Down. Right there. Yes, crouching even more.
And
Lower.
lightsaber?
Yep. More. More. That's it. Now, get the pole vertical right there. That's it. Hands together. Closer to the edge, the end, right there. And
I feel like Titanic, you know, when she has the axe and he's showing her how to hold it.
same thing. Okay. Right there. So it goes parallel to the floor.
Okay.
Okay. She's going to be the darling of Comic-Cons everywhere. Now lastly, I just want you to put it, I want you to hold it, still keep your hand around it, just put it down like that. Yeah. Beautiful. Hand on this, hand on the hip. Chin down. Chin down. Beautiful. I think we're done. All right, we're getting close to wrapping up. Just a couple quick questions, and here's a really good one, and unfortunately I don't know the answer, because kind of to give you a sense of how easy and powerful the PhotoKey software is to use, I've only been using it for a week, and I haven't put that much time into it. And someone asked, can the software handle translucent objects, like for instance a jar of honey? I don't know. That's a really good question. I promise to try that, and I'll let you guys know. That's a really good question. I know there's some folks in the chat room that are talking about some other softwares. I have tried some of the others. I am a real big fan of this one, but it doesn't mean there aren't some other great options. And most of the software companies do have some kind of trial so that you can try them out. So experiment and see which one works best for you. I think, oh, and you might have heard me mention when I was chatting with Bethany on the set that I threatened her with dragons. This is an image that is going to need a little bit more work. I actually put this together late last night. I had to generate an entire scene with the dragon and everything, but I promised her that I'd put dragons in there, and Bethany is just appalled that she's going to get this rep as some kind of Comic-Con girl. So she saw this image this morning for the first time, and we had a lot of fun with it. And again, these green screen softwares, they're generally available for both platforms, Mac and PC, so no worries there, but that's another good question. It's important. It really doesn't care. There are Mac versions and PC versions. So let's finish up. It was really important, two things. One, to have my lights set up on the background so that it was even. I wanted to minimize the amount of wrinkles that were in the muslin, the green muslin, to just make it easier to do the extractions. Again, my lights are metered, and metering is very important for this because I do want to have it even to make it easy on the software. I also wanted to meter my main lights that were illuminating the subject so I could control the ratios. And that's the kind of information that my camera just can't give me. Obviously, if I haven't made it obvious by now, I'm a huge fan of using a light meter. I don't really do any shooting without one, be it landscape or portrait. So to kind of give you a closing little video, and I'm just going to come back at the end. This is about 3 minutes long. I'm going to come back and kind of just give you a closing and let you know what's coming up. But here's a short little slideshow that shows the green screen and then the resulting composite from each shot. Enjoy. All right, as you can probably gather, I had a lot of fun with this. To show you one thing really quick. Actually, we were planning on shooting live, but I've completely run out of time. But actually, before we started today, I did a couple of shots of Bethany here in the studio, and I had created this background using the Bryce 7 software. So let's take a look at my screen. I just want to show you what I did. So what I did was I imported Bethany here, and you can see this is again PhotoKey 5 Pro, and I was able to also make her a little bit transparent. And if I wanted to see a different pose, and again, I posed her knowing what the background was going to be already, I can just play with different images and see which one I like best, click on position, and I can move her around and change the scale, and I made her a little bit transparent. I just thought it kind of made for a more interesting image. And that's it. That's how easy this software is to use. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I plan on doing some more. So that's it for today. Thank you guys for the great questions. And yes, I have my, my prop lightsaber. So how cool is that? Yes, I'm a geek. So Bethany, I had Bethany holding this, and she felt, how geeky did you feel?
A little bit.
She felt really geeky. I could admit to being a geek, but she's not. Until next time.
Happy holidays.
Be safe, have a great holiday, and we'll see you next year. Bye-bye.